Heaven Official's Blessing. Guan Sifu by Mo Xiang Dong Xiu. Read by Plant Bones. Chapter 11. Poking the Ghost King. The Crown Prince Seeks Truth. Crimson rain-sought flower, Xielian asked. Your Highness, the Crown Prince. Sanlang replied. Xielian finally turned around with a grin. That's the first time I've heard you address me like that. The red-clad youth sat on the mat and propped up a leg, also grinning. How does it feel? Xielian gave it a thought and replied truthfully. It feels a little different than when others called me by that title. How so? Hua Cheng asked. Xielian tilted his head, his eyes squinting a little. It's hard to say. It's just... When others called him Your Highness, some were emotionless and all business like Ling Wen, but most of the time when people called him Your Highness, it was laced with a sense of disdain, like how one would intentionally address an ugly woman as a beauty, somewhat sarcastic. Yet, when Huatang called him Your Highness, the two words were uttered with grave sincerity. So while it was hard to describe, Xielian felt that when Huatang called him Your Highness, it was different than when others used the title. He continued, that night at Mount Yuzun, the groom who whisked me away was you, right? Huatang's smile deepened meaningfully, and that made Xielian realize his words may have been too ambiguous. He quickly corrected himself. I mean, the groom in disguise who led me away was you, right? I wasn't disguising myself as a groom, Huatang replied. Technically speaking, Huatang wasn't wrong. The young man at the time never said he was a groom or anything. In fact, he didn't say anything at all. He only stopped in front of the marriage sedan and extended his hand. It was Xielian who went with him willingly. Fine, then why did you appear like that? Xielian asked. This question has two possible answers, Huatang said. First, I came specifically for your royal highness. Second, I was passing by and was free. Which do you think is more believable? Xielian counted the number of days Huatang spent with him and replied earnestly. Which is more believable, I can't say, but you do seem to have a lot of free time. His entire person and his gaze both circled around to Huatang, going back and forth, and after a while he said, You're quite different than what the rumors say. Huatang changed his sitting position, but with a hand still propping up his cheek, he watched Xielian and asked, Oh, and how did your royal highness figure out that I am Crimson Rain-sought Flower? The images of that umbrella dripping with blood, that gently clinking silver chain, and those cold silver vambraces filled Xielian's mind. He thought, it's not like you were trying very hard to hide yourself. Even after all the probing, you gave away nothing, so you must be a supreme. You're dressed in red like the maples, like blood, and seem to know everything, seem to be capable of everything, and know no fear. And such magnanimity, other than Crimson Rain-sought Flower, who all the heavens fear, there didn't seem anyone else you could be. Huatang laughed. May I take those words as a compliment? Can't you tell they're compliments? Xielian thought. Sparing so many words, how come your highness doesn't question my motives in coming close to you? Huacheng asked, his smile curved somewhat. If you didn't want to say anything and I asked, would you tell? You might not tell me the truth, Xielian said. It's not necessarily true, Huacheng said. Besides, you can always kick me out. Xielian replied, You're so powerful. Even if I kicked you out now, if you really wanted to do something bad, wouldn't you just change your skin and come back? The two met eyes and grinned. Suddenly, a small knocking noise broke the temporary silence in the shrine. They looked to where the sound came from, and there wasn't anyone, only that small black clay pot rolling on the ground. It was the same pot Bai Yue was tucked in. Xielian had He placed it next to the mat, but somehow it tipped itself over and rolled to the door. Blocked by the wooden door Huatang built, it started hitting the door by rolling into it repeatedly. Xialian was worried it might break itself, so he opened the door, and the little clay pot rolled onto the grass field outside. Xialian followed behind it, and saw that once the little clay pot made it to the grass field, it stood itself up. Even if it was only a pot, it gave the impression that it was gazing at the night sky. Huachang also emerged from the shrine, and Xialian called out to the pot, Bai Yue, are you awake? Thankfully, when they returned from the Gobi, it was already deep into the night. Otherwise, if anyone had seen Xialian ask a pot how it was doing, they probably would make a huge fuss again. A moment later, the sulky voice of a girl came from the pot. General Hua? Xialian sat down next to it. Bai Yue, have you rolled out here to stargaze? Why don't you come out? Huachang was leaning against a tree next to them and said, She only just left the Banyue ruins. Probably best if she stay in there for a little longer. After all, Banyue had stayed in Banyue for 200 years, and the sudden change of environment might be hard to adjust to. Xialian said, Then you'd best stay in there for a little while longer and heal. This is where I train, so you don't have to worry about anything else. The pot shook twice as if trying to say something. After chewing on his words, Xialian said, Bai Yue, the incident this time didn't actually concern you. Those scorpion snakes were... General Hua, I couldn't move at the time, but I heard everything, Bai Yue said. Xialian was taken aback. Only then did he learn that Peisu only sealed Bai Yue's movements, not her senses. Just as well. If she heard everything, it was just as well. The clay pot asked, General Hua, what will happen to General Pei Jr.? Xialian crossed his arms in his sleeves. I don't know, but wrongdoings will always be punished. Another moment of silence. The pot shook twice, and Xialian finally understood that the shaking was a nod in agreement. General Pei Jr. is not actually a bad person, Bai Yue said. Is that right? Mm-hmm, Bai Yue replied. He's helped me before. Somehow, many more memories suddenly came back to Xialian. Bai Yue often received beatings, and in the words of the other Yang'an children, she bore a face that asked for it. It took a long time after Xialian met her before he learned of this, since no matter how many beatings Bai Yue received, she wouldn't tell anyone. It wasn't until one day, when Xialian saw a group of children pressing her face into the mud, that he learned where all those bruises on her face came from. But when he asked about it, some time afterward, she only remembered that she had to wash the handkerchief from the boy who pulled her out of the mud pit before she returned it, and nothing else. She remembered none of the ones who beat her, but the ones who saved her once, she remembered for a lifetime. Bai Yue continued, Although Keimo always said scornfully that I'm a mind possessed, that I'd been completely used, whether General Pei Jr. used me or not, it was my own will to open the gates. Xialian didn't know what to say anymore, but he could feel some part of his heart soften. A moment later, he patted the clay pot. All right, it's all in the past. By the way, Bai Yue, the name Hua Xie is fake. I haven't been a general for a long time. You don't have to keep calling me General Hua. Then how should I address you? Bai Yue asked. That was actually a good question. If Bai Yue called him Your Highness seriously, it'd feel weird. Xialia didn't really care about his address either. He just wanted to change the subject. That's up to you, I suppose. It's okay if you keep calling me General Hua. Only there was another here with the surname Hua, so that might cause some confusion. But then he thought Hua Xie was a fake name he took from the first word of the title, Flower-Crowned Martial God, so Huatang may very well be a fake name too. That they both coincidentally picked the same word flower for a surname was rather interesting. I'm sorry, General Hua. Ban Yue said again. Xialian turned back to look at her and said woefully, Ban Yue, why are you always apologizing to me? Did he really look that sorry to people? From within the pot, Ban Yue declared, I want to save the common people. Xialian was speechless. General Hua, you said that once, Bai Yue said. Xialian was speechless and confused. He quickly pressed down on the pot. Wait, hold on a sec. Wait, for what? Bai Yue asked. Xialian snuck a glimpse at Huatsang, who was still leaning against the tree with his arms crossed, and said in a low voice, Did I really say that? That was his favorite saying when he was only 10-something years old. In the many centuries thereafter, he shouldn't have uttered those words at all, so hearing them so suddenly makes it difficult to accept. However, Ban Yue was firm. General, those were your words. Xialian still wanted to argue. I don't think so. Bai Yue told him sternly and coldly, Oh no, you did say them. There was a time when you asked us all what we wanted to do when we were older. Everyone answered, and after you said, My dream since I was little was to save the world, the common people. So that was it. Bai Yue, why would you remember something so clearly and something so clearly said completely randomly? Bai Yue was confused. Randomly? But General Hua, I thought those words were said very earnestly. Xialian gazed up at the night sky, feeling helpless. Really? Maybe I don't remember whatever else I might have said. Xial- You also said, do what you think is right, Bai Yue told him. Nothing can block your way. Even if you fall in the mud 100 times, you must get up with determination. And a lot more similar sayings. He didn't need to look back to know it was definitely Huatsang under the tree who laughed at that. Even smothering the pot wouldn't help. Xialian thought, oh, what nonsense. Why do I keep saying those kinds of things? I'm nothing like that, am I? But I don't know what's right anymore, Bai Yue said. Xialian froze at those words. I wanted to do as General Hua said and save the people, Bai Yue continued. But in the end, I destroyed the kingdom of Bai Yue. Her voice was lost. And it seemed that no matter what I did, the results were all horrible. General Hua, I don't know, I didn't do things right, but can you tell me where did I go wrong? How could I do as you said and save the common people? Xialian replied, I'm sorry, Bai Yue. How to save the world, the common people. I didn't know the answer to that question back then. And even now, I still don't. Bai Yue was silent for a moment, and said dejectedly, General Hua, to be honest, it feels like for the past 200 years, I've had no idea what I'm doing. I'm such a failure. Hearing her, Xialian became even more depressed, thinking, doesn't that make me even more of a failure? And I've lived for 800 years too. Xialian left the little ghost Bai Yue in the pot to stargaze alone and calm down. He went back inside Puzi's shrine with Huatang. After closing the door, Xialian suddenly spoke up. Bai Yue remained at Bai Yue Pass willingly. It wasn't because she became a wrath that she was trapped there. She always remembered that it was she who opened the city gates and had never given any excuse, like saying she was doing it for the people. It was to help Bai Yue's soldiers vent their resentment, so they could leave this world sooner. That she allowed Keimo to lead them to murder her over and over. Xialian shook his head. If General Pei Jr. really didn't want to leave those Ban Yue soldiers behind, and also didn't want the heavens to find out, he could have easily sent a clone to secretly descend and take care of them. Why did he do it this way instead? Clones don't have the same amount of power, Hua Chang said. You saw how Pei Xiu's clone Axiao was? He couldn't take care of so many Baiyue soldiers, so feeding them the living was the fastest and easiest way to disperse their resentment. Why did it have to be so fast? Xialian wondered. Maybe it's so little Baiyue wouldn't have to hang so painfully as many times, Hua Chang replied. Xialian was silent for a moment. But what about the mortals? Hua Chang replied quietly. They're heavenly officials. Mortals are nothing but ants in their eyes. Pei Xiu is a classic, highly ranked god. As long as no one found out, killing a few hundred people is no different than stomping a few hundred insects to death. Xialian glanced at him and recalled that when Sanlang jumped into the sinner's pit, he wiped out all the Baiyue soldiers in a flash. He turned to him and said, Clones don't have the same amount of power? I see your clone is pretty powerful. Hua Chang arched his brow. It would be, but I'm the real thing. Xialian turned to look at him, somewhat surprised. Eh? This is your true form? 100% authentic, Hua Chang declared. If anything must be blamed, it would have to be the look on Hua Chang's face, like he was welcoming Xialian to test it out himself. Without thinking, Xialian raised a finger to poke at Hua Chang's face. After poking, Xialian snapped back to himself in a shocked, yelping, "Oh no!" in his head. He was only curious to see what a ghost king's fake skin would feel like, but apparently his body moved faster than his mind and poked him. How extremely outrageous of him to have someone suddenly poke him. Hua Chang looked somewhat shocked too, but he was always calm and collected, so his expression cleared instantly. He didn't say anything, but his arched brow raised even higher, as if waiting for Xialian to explain. The laughter in his eyes was apparent. Of course, Xialian couldn't explain himself. He looked at his own finger, then hid it away, betraying nothing of his thoughts. Not bad. Hua Chang finally burst out laughing, and he crossed his arms with his head tilted. What's not bad? Do you mean the skin? Yeah, it's quite good, Xialian said sincerely. But what? Hua Chang asked. Xialian stared at his face and studied it for a moment, then finally said, But can I see your real face? Since he said this skin, that meant while his body was his true form, the skin wasn't his real one, and this appearance was not his true face. This time, Hua Chang didn't respond immediately and dropped his arms. Maybe it was all in Xialian's head, but Hua Chang's eyes dimmed a little, and Xialian's heart tightened despite himself. When the air froze, Xialian knew his question may have crossed a line. Though for the past few days the two of them had gotten along well, that didn't mean they were so close that he could make this type of request without waiting for his response. Xialian quickly smiled. I was just asking. Don't take it to heart. Hua Chang closed his eyes, and a moment after, he smiled softly. I'll let you see it. Someday, if there's a chance. If anyone else said that, it'd naturally be perfunctory someday, usually meant please forget it. But it was Hua Chang who said it, so Xialian felt that someday meant someday, and it would surely happen. That made him even more curious, and he grinned. Then I'll wait till the day you feel it's okay to show me. Let's rest for now. After bustling about for half the night, Xialian had long since tossed the idea of cooking to the back of his mind and returned to lying on the straw mat. Hua Chang also lay down next to him. No one bothered questioning why. after coming clean about their identities, and a god and a ghost could still lie together on a crappy mat, laughing and chatting. The straw mat didn't have pillows, so Huateng used his arms, and Xialian imitated him, pillowing his head on his arms too. He mentioned casually, "The ghost realm seems so idle. Don't you guys ever need to report back to anyone?" So the ghost realm is made up of. Oh, oopsie, skip it part. Huacheng was not only using his arms as a pillow, but propped his legs up too. He replied, "Report to whom? I'm the biggest one there is. Besides, we all mind our own business. No one bothers anyone." So the ghost realm was made up of many disorganized bands of lost souls and feral ghosts. Xialian replied, "Is that so? I thought it'd be like the upper court with the central government. If it's like that, have you met any other ghost kings before?" "I have," Huatong said. "Even green ghost Shirong?" "You mean that lowly vulgar trash?" Well, what do I say to that? Xialian thought. Yes, no. Thankfully, he didn't need to say anything, as Huatong continued. "I greeted him, and he ran away." Xialian had a hunch that this greeting couldn't have been your regular sort of greeting. Sure enough, Huatong said casually, "And then I received the moniker Crimson Rain Sought Flower." So before, when he mentioned wiping out the lair of another ghost, he was talking about Green Ghost Tirong, and his greeting was carnage. What an extraordinary greeting, Xialian thought, rubbing his chin. "Do you have something against the Green Ghost Tirong?" "Yeah," Huachang replied. "What's that?" "I can't stand his face." Xialian didn't know whether to laugh or cry, thinking, did you challenge those 33 heavenly officials because you also didn't like their faces? The officials of the upper court call him vulgar, and even the ghost realm scorns him. Is that true? It's true. Even Blackwater is disgusted with him, Huachang replied. Who's Blackwater? Xialian asked, then recalled. Oh, is that the one called ship-sinking Blackwater? That's right. He's also known as Blackwater Demon Xuan. Xialian remembered that this Blackwater Demon Xuan was also a supreme, but Green Ghost Tirong was only almost supreme, and just there for the head count. He asked, interested, "Are you close to this Demon Xuan?" "No," Huatong replied lazily. "There aren't many in the ghost realm that I'm close with." Now Xialian was amazed. Is that so? I thought you'd have many subordinates. Maybe our definition of close is different? Huatong quirked his brow. Yeah, in the ghost realm, those lower than the supreme have no right to speak to me. It was an exceedingly arrogant statement, but Huacheng made it sound so indisputable and self-evident. Xialian smiled softly. You have it pretty good in the ghost realm. It's only so big, not like the heavens. I can barely remember the heavenly officials in the upper court, and there are many more waiting to ascend in the middle court. It's like an ocean of names. What good is it to remember them? Don't bother. It's a waste of your brain, Huacheng said. It's kind of offensive if you can't remember their names. The heavenly officials loved their reputations. Huacheng clicked his tongue. If they can be offended by such a small thing, then they're nothing but narrow-minded trash. After chatting that much, Xialian didn't want to dig too deeply into the subject, lest they touch on something sensitive, so he changed the topic away from the differences between the two realms. He glanced at the closed wooden door and wondered, Bai Yue, that child, I wonder when she'll come back inside. The bold words, "I want to save the common people," returned and reverberated in his head, pouring a mess of images in his mind, and Xialian had to forcibly push them down. Just then, Huatong spoke up. Those were good words. Which ones? Xialian asked. I want to save the world, the common people, Huatong replied leisurely. Xialian was thunderstruck. He flipped over and curled into a shrimp, wishing for another pair of arms so that he could cover his face and his ears. He groaned. Oh, Chanla. Huatong seemed to have nudged closer and deadpanned right behind him. What's wrong with those words? Huachang wouldn't back down, and Xialian couldn't win against him, so he flipped back over and said helplessly, It's silly. What's there to be afraid of? Huachang said. To dare speak of the people of the world, whether to save or destroy them, is admirable. The former is harder than the latter, so that's even more respectable. Xialian shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. If you dare to speak, you have to be able to follow through and actually achieve it. He laid his arm over his eyes. Oh, all right, I suppose it's nothing. What Banyue said was... Wait. What Banyue said was already pretty good. I've said sillier things when I was even younger. Huachang laughed. Oh, like what? Let's hear it. Xialian was pensive for a moment, and he smiled softly as he chased his memories. Many, many years ago, there was someone who told me they couldn't live on anymore. They asked me for a reason they were alive, and what was the meaning of their life. He glanced at Huacheng. Do you know how I answered? It might have just been Xialian's imagination, but there seemed to be light in Huacheng's eyes. He asked softly, How did you answer? Xialian said, I told them, if you don't know how to live on anymore, then live for me. If you don't know the meaning of your life, then make me that meaning. Use me as your reason to live. As Xialian spoke, he couldn't help but let out a small laugh and shook his head. Even now, I don't understand what I was thinking back then. How did I ever have the courage to tell someone to make the meaning of their life me? Hotong was silent, and Xialian continued. It really was something that only could have been said back then. Long ago, I really thought that I was invincible and fearless. If you asked me to say the same words now, there's no way they would ever leave my lips again. Xialian continued slowly. I don't know what happened to that person afterward. But to become someone's reason to live is already a heavy responsibility. How dare I speak of the world? Silence blanketed Puti Shrine. After a while, Sanlang said quietly, Something like saving the common people. It doesn't matter how you do it, but although brave, it's foolish. Yeah, Xialian agreed. Huacheng continued. But although foolish, it's brave. Xialian grinned. Thanks. You're welcome, Huacheng said. The two stared at the holy ceiling of Puchi Shrine in amiable silence, and Huacheng spoke up again after a while. You know, Your Highness, we've only known each other for a few days. Is it all right for you to say so much to me? Well, Xialian huffed. What's the problem? Whatever. Those two have known each other for decades, and those who have known each other for decades can become strangers in a day. We met by chance, and we may part by chance. If we like each other, then we'll continue to meet. If we don't, then we'll part. At the end of the day, there's no banquet in this world that doesn't come to an end. So let's take it easy, and I'll say what I want to say. Huatong seemed to have chuckled, and then suddenly said, If... Xialian turned his head to face him. If... Huachang didn't turn around, but continued to stare at the dilapidated ceiling of the shrine, and Xialian could only see this handsome young man's left profile. Huachang said softly, "If I was ugly." Huh? Xialian gaped. Huachang finally turned his head lightly. "If my true appearance is ugly, would you still want to see it?" Xialian was taken aback. "Is it? Although there's no real reason. I never thought your true appearance would be too horrible looking." "Who knows?" Huachang said, half jokingly. What if I'm discolored, disfigured, ugly, monstrous, and horrible? What will you do?" At first, Xialian thought this line of inquiry was rather fascinating. So the overlord of the ghost realm, the one called the devil incarnate and feared by all in the heavens, who would care about his looks? But when he thought about it deeply, he didn't think it was very funny anymore. He vaguely recalled in the many rumored backstories of Huatang. One of them said that he was a disfigured child from birth, or something along those lines. If that was true, then he must have grown up discriminated against by others. Maybe that's why he was particularly sensitive about his appearance. Thus, Xialian chewed on his words. "Well?" He used his warmest, most sincere voice. "To be honest, the reason I want to see your true appearance is only because, you see, we're already like this." "Hmm?" Huachang piped up. "Like what?" "Well, we're sort of friends now, right? So if we're friends, then we should be honest with each other. My wanting to see your true appearance has nothing to do with how you look. You asked what I would do, but of course I won't do anything. Don't worry. As long as your real face, I'm sure I'll... Why are you laughing? I'm being serious." When Xialian realized the last part, When Celian reached the last part, he could feel the youth next to him shaking. He froze for a moment at first and thought, "Are my words so moving that he's touched like this?" And was all too embarrassed to turn around to see. But after a while, the soft laughter from next to him very obviously leaked out. Celian felt rather deflated and placed a hand on his shoulder to give it a little push. "Sunlong, why are you laughing so much? Did I say something wrong?" Huachang immediately stopped shaking and turned around. "No, you're very right." Xialian felt even more deflated at those words. "You're so insincere." "I promise, you won't find another person more sincere than me in this world," Huachang replied. Xialian didn't want to talk anymore and flipped over, his back facing Huachang. "Forget it. Time to sleep. Don't talk." Huachang chuckled again, then said, "Next time." Even though he was determined to sleep, hearing Huachang speak, Xialian couldn't resist replying. "What's next time?" Huachang whispered. "The next time we meet, I'll use my true appearance to greet you." There was much to ponder about those words. Xialian should have kept questioning him, but after a long night, an unstoppable drowsiness took over him, and he couldn't hang on, falling into a deep slumber. The next morning, when Xialian woke up, the spot next to him was already empty. He scrambled to get up and walked around the shrine in a daze. When he opened the door, there were no figures to be seen outside. It seemed like it was true. The youth had indeed left. However, the fallen leaves had been swept into a pile, and next to that pile stood a small clay pot. Xialian took the pot inside and placed it on the altar. Right then, he suddenly noticed that there seemed to be something extra on his usually bare chest. He raised his hand to touch it, and found jewelry just below the cursed collar. There was an exceedingly thin chain. hanging loose and light. Cielian immediately removed it from his neck. It turned out it was a silver chain, so thin and light he hadn't felt anything on him before, and dangling from that chain was a crystal clear ring. And that's the end of Volume 1. As a quick warning, I am probably going to take a short break in uploading before I start Volume 2. But I hope you enjoyed. Thanks, everyone. I've been having a lot of fun with this.